let me introduce RGD's Vice President of Ethics and Chair of our Diversity and Inclusion Committee, who's going to talk about her career journey and involvement in RGD. Jen, do you want to take it away? Oh, I'm going to make you the. Are you showing something? Do you need me to make you a presenter?
I have a couple of websites open.
Okay. Whoa. Not now. All right, I'm going to make you our presenter.
Perfect. Hopefully, okay, I'll see if it works. I should have tested again. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with everyone. It's always nice to hang out with people who are, pursuing their education as designers, and those who are working on extracurricular stuff and doing volunteer work, because I've been passionate about RGD since I was in college, and I think that's made really a huge impact on my career and kind of the path that I've come into over the last like 16 years, from school to now. So I started with, well, I'll do a little bit of career because I think that kind of leads into RGD. I didn't go to school originally for graphic design. I went for business and history, and I just hated it. It was not something I wanted to do. It's ironic because I own a business, but I just couldn't handle all the, financial reviews. And I was like, this really, really sucks. So I dropped out and I went and worked at an internet provider that here locally and did tech support, because I love computers. I like, talking with people, and what I was learning on the side, like the job was super easy. But people would, businesses would want a website because they would get their internet, they'd get a domain, they'd get free hosting, but they had no one to help make a website. So I started learning how to make them back when it was a lot easier than it is now, when it was pretty much HTML and CSS. So that got me really interested in helping other businesses get online. And it took me a little bit of courage, but I finally quit that job to go back to school. And once I realized that a graphic designer and being a web designer was actually something you could do as a job. And I know it's still kind of in development, but you couldn't really be a full web developer. Like there wasn't any courses when I started. It was graphic design. So I went to Cambrian, and the professors there were really amazing, and they helped with a lot of networking with RGD. And even when I was in first year, we had guest speakers like myself speaking to you, people who were running businesses, professionals in the field, freelancers, just come and chat with us about, what they were doing. And I thought that was really cool. We had people who, were young, who were our age, who were women, who were starting their own businesses. And I thought, my experience working in tech, being, under male bosses who I didn't think, were doing such a great job with their employees or, with their companies, but they were still being successful. I thought that, I think that's something that I could do. Not to say it's easy, but seeing people like myself, seeing people go through the programs, it was really, really exciting to me. And it still is exciting to me. And so I finished up my diploma at Cambrian, and I met some great people there. I started, when we graduated, there was really not much jobs in the field. It was 2009. So not an unsimilar situation like that. We didn't have a pandemic, but we did have a recession. So no one was hiring. And so I asked Melissa Deshane and another friend of ours to, go into business. I didn't really want to be specifically a freelancer because I had kind of done that while I was working, and I wanted to do something that was, a little bit more formal, that we had our logo, we had our branding, and I had people to work with, to go to work with. And because I think that's motivating. I think sometimes it's really hard by yourself to keep motivating, and especially now we're isolated, and even digitally, it's nice to have people who you can chat with. And the value of RGD is like, hey, if you're on volunteer groups like this, you can easily reach out. You can email people like me, or set up a phone call. And pretty much everyone who is involved just really wants to help everybody out. being graphic designer it's really rewarding and it's a fun job. Every day we get to learn new things. Technology is changing, and it's just nice to have that support network because being a designer, there's almost like limitless paths you can go in. So we started the company. We literally just went down to City Hall and registered our business. We didn't have a business plan. I had no idea what I was doing, other than I knew we had some computers and we could do some graphic design, and hopefully make some money. So, um, and it grew, it took a while. We used a lot of resources from RGD to kind of get us going. The handbook was still something we use when we have to, do contracts, or, what happens when you need to hire somebody for help? What happens if you need to work with an illustrator? What's the contract for that? Of course, designers are very capable at doing a lot by themselves, but it's easier and more effective if you work with people who are good at what they do as well. So oftentimes people think we're, illustrators or photographers, and we know the basics, but if we're a good designer, we might have a friend who's a good photographer. So that makes our work even better, the networking, and then people. So if you're looking for jobs, a lot of people in RGD, they talk to one another. So if they're looking for people to hire, or if we're interviewing someone, I've asked Hillary if she knows anyone who's had experience with this designer, or kind of kept track of where they've worked at and how their work is, or how they were as a person. Because showing up to volunteer, you're already a step ahead of other designers, in people whose hires eyes. Like, if I know that you're spending 2 hours, a month dedicated to helping other students, helping other designers, I think that's a really big bonus, in terms of your career and your resume, and just knowing, look at all the people here. You don't know where people will end up in a couple of years and how they might be able to support you or you support them. I used a lot of those resources, in the last decade. And now, it's really nice to be able to help and kind of show, what really works. So we've been running Design to Plume since 2009, which is like 12 years, 13 years, something like that.
Time flies.
I know, it's like the numbers are getting big now. And we went from originally 3 people, we have now 12 people at our office. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So, and that starts to, I think, for design firms that do kind of what we do, a boutique level, that's starting to get up there in terms of full-time jobs. And we're not located in Southern Ontario. We're located in Northern Ontario. And that was also a career decision that we had made, to try to focus and bring full-time jobs to our home communities. We were told when I graduated and said I wanted to start a business, I was literally told I was stupid to do that. And, people were like, oh, well, you'll have to move to do that. And it's funny because, if we're looking in terms of what's happening right now, Sudbury's a little bit calmer in terms of the pandemic. We were already set up virtually. Our team is really experienced with that. And it helps in a big scheme. It really helps to diversify the economy up here. We have designers who are close to their home, who still have jobs. We're still able to do exactly what they do and support, their families, their partners, and their cats and dogs who are at home with them. So I think that's kind of a really great feeling to know that as a designer, you can work from anywhere. You got your computer, as long as your internet's up, you're pretty good. So that's sort of where we are career-wise. And for myself personally, like, I don't do much design anymore. So I did get my diploma in graphic design. I went a couple years later to get my degree in communications. A lot of colleges have articulation agreements with universities that you can get a degree. And I really like to call it my bargain basement degree because I paid for 3 years of college and only 1 year of university and still got a diploma and a degree, while other communications majors had to pay for 4 years of university, which was like twice the price. So and I did it all in 1 year. So that's pretty nice to get the education and know that even the universities value the work that you've learned in college. So they're important skills. So what I do primarily now is I do a lot of new business. Um, I reach out to clients and, ask them about what their needs are. I respond to RFPs, which are requests for proposals. So sometimes larger organizations will say, they need a website. And I get in touch with them to find out what exactly it is that they need. And, my background as a web designer, as a graphic designer, and now I'll say kind of in sales, in project management, I know how websites are built. It's a lot easier to sell something, when you know how it works or what the new trends are. Um, so that's been really, really interesting to kind of have people on our team who just do design, and then move into a role that's more management, more sales, and use the capacity of good design. Essentially, I use good design and branding to sell ourselves and kind of that knowledge, um, that we have as graphic designers, as jack of all trades. So, and if you look at the programs and streams that RGD has, we have them for educators, we have them for in-house designers, for freelancers, and for business managers and business owners and freelancers. So those are really, really different ways to approach, building a website, making a logo, or hiring someone else to make a logo, and you managing the process. So there's so many avenues, and I think it's a really great career choice, especially now. And having been in it for over a decade, I'm still happy. That I still really love what I do, and there's no real days where I get bored, because there's always something going on. So that's where we are. And Design and Plume is indigenously owned, so we're women owned, we're indigenously owned, and about I'd say it was probably about 8 years ago now, we really focused on serving um, underrepresented groups, so like Indigenous communities, um, uh, like everyone that we're associated with who just does not have a voice out there, and that's been really successful for us because a lot of people, like if we have First Nation communities, they don't have a lot of resources online, you know, and it's us to think about, how's the best way to get those communities information online, especially in, a day like today where we can't even access people physically, or our communities are in the north with limited internet. Um, so not only in design, you can focus on specific things. You can be as specialized as you want, whether you're, a typographer, you design posters, you're more illustrative, or you just the people that you work with. A lot of designers choose to work with only nonprofits, or, work with corporate because your clients are, quite different in how they approach the work and kind of their end goals. Sometimes it's about making money, the projects you take on, and sometimes it's just about, helping that area, that community really communicate their message. So I think it's also a feel good job, and um, I think it's really cool that we get to use all those skills in kind of any way that we want to. If you're corporate focused, and are after the kind of bottom dollar, there's work out there for you. And if you're a little bit more social minded, thinking about diversity, the communication and the messaging that's going on today, that's a path for you as well. And we've kind of run the gamut in our career, so working with companies and non-for-profits, and you kind of get a feel for it, or an in-house designer. So RGD has really helped with all those kind of levels of communication and business exploration, and knowing that if I had a question about if we have to do pro bono work, there's someone at RGD. We have guides, on how to do it, how to make sure you're not taken advantage of. Uh, and I'll talk a little bit about the diversity and ethics too, but we've developed resources that I've referenced, and I've helped develop them because it's just something you're like, okay, I have a problem. You're going to encounter them, no matter what kind of path your career is on. And RGD is developing these resources, or the tools that you guys, that you're working on. So someone's going to take a look at that and say, I think you're talking about accessibility and, different ways of doing design. Those are skills that, are so important right now. And I've used them, like I said, from student to today. Those are all materials that I reference, or networks that I use. And, we have RGD runs our firm owner chat and discussion. And the kind of things that we talk about there, are not things that I would have thought about 6 years ago. Like discussing about insurance for our employees, insurance for disaster. Like what happens when we have to move a whole office to work from home? Because your employer, if you work for them, they have to make sure that, you know, you need to be able to do your job in a safe and effective manner. So that's something new that we've had to reference and kind of chat about. And RGD's been there because it knows, well, a lot of us are, not just freelancers. We own firms and we have other designers, project managers, accountants, that kind of thing. We hire them. So that's been really great and kind of really, I'm going to call this like a worst case scenario for graphic design, for an industry. RGD has been working hard on kind of pulling people together, even if it's just to chat, you know. Um, the lockdown again, I thought, you're thinking you're kind of back. For us, we were back at the office because we have a large enough space to accommodate it. Now that we're kind of back at home, the kind of switching and lockdown, it's not easy for people, but RGD has definitely helped with the mental load of that, and knowing, we're all in the same boat. We want, we want to have careers that support us and support the people around us. And what's the best way to do that? It's by bringing as many people who care together to kind of do those things. So the stuff that you're working on at a student level, I think is great, because these are the projects that really prepare you for, what's out there on a realistic basis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of my career overview and experience with RGD. I volunteered. There's kind of, I think, as a student, I dropped off for a bit, but I've been on student committees and on the ethics committee and its speaking engagements, and it's really exciting to get involved with those, just to see everyone and what they're doing. And then I think I can maybe, Hillary, I'll chat a little bit about like our work, and then I'll do the RGD kind of stuff. Let's see if I can share a screen with you guys. Oh, I don't think it's going to let me share my screen.
Push.
When you're done,
Yeah,
restart.
we've been having this problem. We've been having this problem with everybody.
Just keep saying like not now.
This conference will now be recorded.
I'll restart that. Right. So this website that that I'm showing is the We Matter campaign, and they are a charity group that focuses on Indigenous suicide prevention. So what their goal was is to pull a bunch of stories about, kind of taking, a page from the It Gets Better, for the LGBTQ community, to show people's stories, especially for Indigenous people who are in remote communities, who are isolated and don't have all the resources that other communities have. So we worked with them to make a website that really showed those stories in a way that was easy to connect with, that would showcase Indigenous youth and be something that more youth would want to engage with. So we have a little bit of, hand-drawn icons, something that kind of very, I won't say super friendly, but very approachable. It's an incredibly serious topic, but we wanted to show the passion behind the people who make the videos, and the famous Indigenous actors who worked on the campaign and helped create messages, and as a kind of a hub for toolkits and activities and campaigns. This one was like a really great project because in things like this, I'll be super honest, they got money to make their website. So not only do we get paid to do something great, we can add donated, we call it like in-kind donations, in terms of features or putting in that extra effort to really make sure that they can maximize every dollar that they get. And because we work a lot with nonprofits, we know how to make that balance be sustainable for us so that we can have people hired, but also that charities and nonprofits for-profits can make the most of what they get. So this was a really great project in both aspects, and their reach across Canada has grown immensely over the last couple of years. And now they have merch and selling stuff. So it's been great to work with them as they expand and reach more people, which is obviously the goal, and share more stories. So that one's one that we recently launched, which I really, really like. And then I'm going to show you. It's in the chat, Two Worlds Consulting. This one is a little bit more corporate. They're still Indigenous, but they are an organization that kind of bridges Indigenous communities and non-Indigenous businesses and consultants. So this one, where we matter, we get to design that targets youth. It's a little bit more, we can be a little bit more pushing the boundaries with it. This one we had a more corporate feeling. We did the branding with it as well. And I really liked under the what we do, there's a services page. So it's nice when you get to do text heavy pages, but be able to use technology that, makes things like you guys are talking about, really accessible, user friendly, and approachable in a way where, their potential clients kind of see all their services, see, wow, they do a lot of stuff, but don't feel overwhelmed with the information, which is, I think you'll find when you're designing websites, your client will either have too much information or too little. So dealing with that in kind of effective ways. I think this website kind of showcases, a few features that really help web designers organize that information for clients, highlighting what sells, bullet lists to make sure that people are, not overwhelmed. But yeah, that one is one that we recently launched too.
Jen, we don't have a lot of time because we do have other committee stuff. I wonder if we want to just see if there are questions because last time we had quite a few questions. So sorry to do that, but
no. I'll send the last one in case. I won't talk about it, but that one's the coolest one I saved for last.
Unless there are no questions, and then we can go back to looking at the website. But does anybody want to get some specific advice or suggestions from Jen or questions?
I have a question. Thank you for, first of all, coming to speak with us and showing us some of your work. It's really cool. I was just wondering, when you kind of made the pivot to focus on a specific target, like base of clients, what really motivated that move? Or, well, yeah, what motivated that move?
So, I mean, I'm Indigenous, and one of our other business partners is non-status. But that, I've had that status, and it wasn't, a primary thing when we opened our business. So it was really taking a look at, we worked with a lot of corporate clients, and we had started to work with a couple of Indigenous communities, and it was a really different vibe. Like when you work with a for-profit organization, I don't know, I didn't like it. I didn't like necessarily the structures, who we were dealing with, how we were being talked to. I think as a young women-owned organization, we had a much different struggle than our counterparts, who were male, who were white. And we recognized that challenge instantly. So we were just working with nicer people when we focused on Indigenous and non-for-profit. The budgets are, if you think about corporations spending money, I feel like in the case, they were more worried about it because it was their money. In the cases of non-for-profits and charities, it's often donated, or it's grants, or it's funding, and they know they need to spend it. They know the value of that dollar, and by hiring experts, they would get the job done correctly. So they knew hiring a designer was an important piece, and they wanted to invest in it. So we really like those relationships, and we decided to focus on them just because it was a lot easier and a lot nicer dealing with them.
All right, thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, that was a great question. I have a question. If there isn't one from, I mean, you're up to 12 now.
Yeah.
That must be a transition.
Yes. Stussy was one who said, once you get like over 10, it really changes, and at 15, there's another significant change. And I do feel it. Like, we are quite busy, but having different roles, like knowing that you need a project manager, because it's something that I really suck at. I'm not good at saying this should be done by this date. As a student, I would do everything the night before. I didn't care how big the project was. I would literally, and that's when you're working with a big project, you literally can't do it the night before. So we had to hire people, to make sure that it gets done in bite-sized chunks. And doing someone's personal website, or a website that's let's say $5,000 versus a website that's $70,000, the basic structure is kind of the same. You're doing the same things, but there is significantly more work, and more hands and more processes. So that's something that we've had to learn. And again, RGD has resources to help us talk to people. We're working with Emily Cohen, who's a speaker at Design Thinkers. She spoke this year. She spoke a couple of years. She's a business coach who's worked with graphic designers all across the States and Canada. And when we messaged her, we were like, yo, we really suck, we need help. And we're a little graphic design firm in Northern Ontario. And I think, I'm going to call her like a city slicker American. Like, she knows some big names. I think she was a bit like, can you guys afford me? And we're like, yeah, like, we do really good. We've got lots of people. So we've had to get people, come in and help us to learn those skills that, they're not necessarily going to teach you project management, in college, because you're a graphic designer, not a project manager. But seeing people speak at Design Thinkers and being like, oh, that's a problem I have, I should reach out to these people. And the reason why they get invited back every year is because they're nice, because they're helping designers solve problems. They're easy to talk to, and they really know their stuff. So we've taken advantage of a lot of people like that through RGD over the last, whenever we need them.
Well, that's good to know. I wasn't expecting to hear that, but I can imagine. I mean, yeah, we're at under 10, and I feel like it's, yeah.
Oh, it's just the level. Like, we're definitely, and we're busy right now too, so that's why my brain is a bit scrambled. Like, it was crazy before the holidays, and we really had to rely on new team members, hiring people who just do programming. They're not designers in any sense. They're not there to make things pretty. They're there to make things run. And that's a different mindset than, me building a website. So how people approach projects is really interesting, and it presents new challenges on how to work with people. So
have you hired people virtually?
One of our recent hires, our programmer, we didn't meet in person. Like, he has come to the office when we were allowed to, but we did hire him during the peak of the first wave of the pandemic. So yeah, we have done virtual testing, and I'll plug one of the projects, that the ethics committee worked on was the skills testing. So even for a programmer, we reference some skill testing on what would be, appropriate, to make sure that we paid them. And I let people know, because I didn't do the hiring, but I said, here's a document, follow it, make sure you pay this person for their time. If they're at a level where we're seriously considering them, make sure that, their time is valued, and, that we're testing them in a way that makes sense for them and for us. So that's what I was saying. We're using resources that I've seen in development and helped comment on. So they're things that I reference all the time.
Such a quiet group. I think it must be we're still in holiday brain.
I was gonna say, like, I really related to your story, because I think if you asked me at the beginning of my design career, like the big corporations sounded like fun, like they sounded more appealing to me. But as I started to like just grow as a designer, like I think along that journey, like empathy was a huge part of my journey for me personally. And then when it came to looking for my internships, it was really like, I call it like social good work. Like I was really looking at like not for profits. Like I was just really looking at like joining a company where they might not have like the Nike or like the Apple, but like they would be doing work in communities that needed help. And I
Hmm.
think that shift of focus was so huge because I think at the beginning, like when I look back, I'm just like, it did sound so appealing, but I think at the end, I think developing empathy was huge, like for me. And then when I got the internship where I'll be starting in next week, where I got that internship, like our philosophies just lined up so well and it like meshed so well that it felt good to work there. So like kind of in you telling your story about how it almost became, I guess for you, like it was really personal and like you were really personally attached to it. So I really appreciate that in stories. And I feel like a lot of designers are talking a lot about empathy now. Um, just not even who they work for, but just like the audiences and like just interacting with people, like not
Yeah.
being robots, but just building human connections is so important. So yeah.
Oh yeah. And I think that's like, there's different ways to approach the work that you do, no matter what field you're in. And I know me and my business partners, we love what we do. Like we literally just go into work, we love it. Um, and graphic design has really like, a long history in kind of, like a Western, very corporate, very slick, very minimalist, very, I'll say like ultimately capitalist, kind of realm. And I think that we are seeing that move to like, like you said, the social good, like the tools that we have about communication are things that you can apply to a lot of fields and a lot of areas. So I mean, your career, I thought the same thing when I was in college. When you're seeing all these, I thought, okay, I mean, you're going to work for the biggest corporations and do these logos and websites. And I think that's really changing. The opportunities for designers are just, people are seeing the value in that across the board. So really, whoever you want to work with, if you have a good argument, RGD has good resources. It's not hard to convince someone why they need a graphic designer in whatever field or for whatever passion project, or area of interest, whether it's health, whether it's, like for us, for, indigenous communities, francophone communities, whether it's geographical, like it's so varied for us. And you can change, like if you get tired of one thing, you can try something else. So there's not many fields, I think, that allow that much variety in that many areas. So and yeah, and congratulations on your internship.
I know we're in a different time period. That's all I'll say. Is that
I know.
internships are much harder to get with pandemic.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely.
And you're going to be doing a virtual internship then?
Yeah, I will be doing it virtual. So I would love to be in person, but yeah, I'll be doing it virtual.
Yeah, and I mean, it'll give you experience working online, especially if we do a lot of that on a day from before. We do like having people in the office because it's a different, it's a different vibe. But I think even after this, like, the direction will be as much online for a while. So
Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, thank you so much for you're busy and you've got a little kid at home, and so thank you so
I had
much
to
for
put him to
taking out
bed
the
before I
time.
came.
I figured that was what it was. Yeah.
7 o'clock on the dot. I can be anywhere.
And I guess I'll see you. We didn't talk as much about the RGD stuff, but I think hearing your journey was amazing, and you certainly
Even when you
plugged
graduate,
RGD.
join committees. That's all I can say. Is there's lots of work being done. It's great. You know, we did enough work on the ethics committee that we started a new committee on diversity and inclusion, which is really exciting. So the work that you're doing here, it translates well to other things, and you get to meet pretty cool people. So
yeah, Danielle can attest to that as well, I think. Thank you, Jen.
Okay, have
And
a
I'll
good
see
night,
you
everyone.
Friday.
Thank you. Yeah,
Bye.
have a good night, Hillary.